Hello and welcome to the Talking NorCal podcast, the official podcast of Active NorCal. I am your host, Zach O'Brien, and with me here, it's Big Hair Bob. How you doing, Bob?
Feeling big hair, but I get a haircut today, so I'm going to shrink the hair later.
So I have a story why, because if you listen to this podcast, I try to make up a nickname for Bob every week. I've been falling short lately.
Yes,
so my 2-year-old son loves to see Bob. He loves Bob, and he always talks about Bob, and he wants to FaceTime him, and he was saying it over the weekend, and I wasn't in the mood to FaceTime you, so instead we put on Season 8 of MasterChef, and I always am shocked how big they made your hair in that show.
I wish my hair could be bigger. I wish every day I could get it as tall as they got it there.
But if you rewatch that, do you say because they're the ones that did your hair and makeup? Are you like shocked of how big your hair is?
No, I mean, no. I had people had gotten my hair like that before, but it would get bigger when I would like cook, and like my head would sweat, and when my head sweats, my hair stands straight up. So. Yeah, there's a couple bad looks.
Just Ace Ventura vibes.
Yeah. Ace Ventura is a real good-looking man.
The son is a fan of Bob on MasterChef.
Did he watch full episodes?
No. I didn't. No offense. I've watched that so many times. I didn't want to watch full. I didn't want to watch full episodes, but we had fun. He had fun watching Uncle Bob.
So you call me Big Hair Bob just based on the big hair they gave me on the show.
I called you Big Hair Bob because I was just shocked. Anyone that's never seen Bob on MasterChef, go back to Season 8 of MasterChef.
Or 12, but
Season 8 me there. Well, 12 doesn't have as big hair,
That's
I feel
true.
like. Season 8 shorter, is straight Ace Ventura vibes.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a fantastic, jam-packed show today. This is probably going to be one of our longest shows we've ever done. We just have
probably the most political show.
We have politics to talk about because the election was last week. Don't worry, we're not talking about the presidential election or anything like that.
Well, you just did.
But we have some local politics stuff to talk about. First of all, though, this podcast is brought to you by houseboats.com. So we've had tremendous response to the giveaway we're doing with houseboats.com. That is Silverthorne and Jones Valley Resort on Shasta Lake, and we've teamed with them to give away the Odyssey houseboat on Shasta Lake, a full 3-night rental worth more than $3,000. This is a huge deal. To sign up for the giveaway, you have to be subscribed to the Active NorCal magazine. You have to go to any of our Instagram or Facebook posts promoting this giveaway and comment houseboat, and then we'll send you a link to confirm your subscription. That's it. We are announcing the winner November 19th. So this is, again, our biggest giveaway we've ever done. Houseboats.com, thanks to them.
Yeah, I talked about it last week. I went and visited them down in Jones Valley, and man, what a great setup they have. That boat is sick. I mentioned it last week. All the houseboats at Jones Valley have hot tubs. Now, I haven't been on a houseboat in clearly far too long. That's new to me, and I thought it was so cool. You can bring, 18 of your friends, sleep 3 nights. It's just a sick setup. Obviously, they got a water slide that goes down to the water from the second story to the first story. You can drive the boat from the top or the bottom, which is also really cool. And he really assured me that if you don't know how to drive a houseboat, don't worry about it. We'll get you taught. Yeah. We're gonna take you through a quick orientation. If you could drive a car, you could drive a boat. It's as simple as
they go so slow. There's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, you just kind of have to learn how to park on the shore. That's about it. But yeah, the Odyssey houseboat sleeps 19 people, includes 8 beds, 2 private staterooms, 1.5 baths, and like Bob said, a hot tub. Again, go to our social media pages, comment houseboat. We'll confirm your subscription to the Active NorCal magazine, and we are giving this away on November 19th. Big shout out to our friends at houseboats.com. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to do. Let's start with the Tahoes, hella NorCal.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and there are no salad dudes who kick it down in Santa Cruz. Or NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.
Okay, we have a lot to talk about on this episode today. First, I just wanted to say shout out to my friend Daniel, who I play hockey with. I saw him last night, and he said our podcast about Sasquatch Sunset made him go watch the movie, and I felt so apologetic to him that it inspired him to go watch that film.
Now, he did watch it.
He said it kind of turned into this thing where he couldn't look away. I was like, you watched the whole thing? He said, yeah, I think he watched the whole thing. So anyway, I felt, because he told me that, I feel the need to apologize to everyone for if you went out and watched that film afterwards. It is a crazy film. If you haven't listened to that episode, you can go back a couple episodes and listen to it.
Now, I'm not one to get into the comment sections. I just don't. Have you seen comments about?
I haven't looked.
Okay, all right.
I haven't looked. I think most people have similar. It was just a weird movie, a pointless movie. We litigate all this in the past episode.
No, I remember watching the movie and being like, we can't possibly do a podcast about this, but we did, and
Now we do. So anyone that doesn't know, we do these movie review podcasts of movies filmed mostly or exclusively in Northern California. Sasquatch Sunset was filmed in the Humboldt Redwoods. It was beautiful. We gave it that. But we do it when one of us are out of town and we can't do a podcast like this. So we have one of those coming up. So maybe we should put out on social and let people vote on the next one we do.
That's a great idea.
There's big ones we haven't done yet. We haven't done like The Godfather 2. We haven't done, I can't even, we have a long list on our website of all these movies.
But we've done filmed. The big dogs.
Yeah. Godfather 2.
No, we haven't done Godfather 2.
But there's also new ones that we haven't really talked about that much on the website. So anyway, I think we'll put together some sort of graphic and let the people vote on it, because that's coming up in like 2 or 3 weeks that we're going to have to do one of these. So anyway, let's get into, before we get into our normal news of the week, last week was the elections. And again, we're not going to talk about the presidential election. We don't get into politics on a grand scale like that. We get into politics that means something for the outdoors of Northern California. And by my estimation, there were really three things on the ballot locally that sort of impact, tourism and outdoor recreation and water in Northern California. Should we talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about it. The first one we'll talk about is Prop 4. California approves a $10 billion bond for water, climate, and environmental projects.
This is mostly for water, right? So they have $3.8 billion of this going to water projects. They have another $1.5 billion going to wildfire, and another $1.2 billion going to coastal protections. Now, again, I should have said this. We don't get into politics because I made a joke once on our social media pages. President-elect Donald Trump talked about Yosemite National Park. He mispronounced Yosemite. He called it Yosemite. We've talked about this in the past, and we made a joke about it. It was purely just a fun thing. We weren't making a political statement. I literally got threats from that post. So we stopped talking about it. So, but this is completely, this is into what we do. So yeah, we got a ton of money going to water. We got a ton of money going to fire. And this is something that, because it pertains to us, I actually publicly endorsed on our website and on our social media pages.
Yeah, Northern California, we talk about it, lives and breathes with water. And a lot of the bad things that come from lack of water are fires. So a lot of people would think, you would make a whole, proposition regarding wildfire. But the bigger issue is water. So it does both. I like that they did lay out that there is over $1 billion set aside for wildfire. But water is huge, and it's the future. I mean, we need clean water to drink. We need to keep the recreational areas that do have clean water clean, to continue the recreation. That's going to bring the tourist dollars in. I'm a fan of this. I like when I voted for this. But yeah, I'm glad it passed. It's it's an additional tax. We're taxed to no end here in California, and there are certain things that I say are worth my tax dollars, and certain things that I personally don't. This one I feel is my own opinion, so I'm glad it passed.
Yeah, the people against it say it's just we're just spending, which I totally get that. But in this case, I feel like it's something that we need to invest in. You need to invest in flood protections before the floods happen. You need to invest in wildfire protections before the wildfires happen. Also, we need to invest in things like Sites Reservoir to increase our water storage moving forward as California gets bigger and more populated. So this is a good move all around.
Absolutely agree. All right, the next one that we'll talk about. South Lake Tahoe residents reject vacant vacation home tax. Have to say,
you called it. Yeah. So we talked about this on the last episode, and Bob thought it was going to not pass. I thought it did. It ended up not passing. So this was
not passing like massively.
It was rejected.
Rejected 77%.
73% opposed the measure, which it kind of tells a story to me. I don't know. How many of these people that were voting have these homes? I don't know.
Right.
So because if you're not paying the tax, I'm just surprised more people didn't vote for it that weren't having to pay the tax. But essentially this was trying to get second homeowners who occupy their properties only less than half the year to pay an extra $3,000 a year in taxes, and that could move up to $6,000 a year in taxes, depending on how often they're there. This is trying to fight the housing shortage in South Lake Tahoe. The people who, come from all around the world, all around the country to work at these ski resorts, they work at the restaurants, they work at the shops and the stores. They can't afford to buy homes. They can't even afford to rent homes because all these vacation homes just sit empty.
Not only that, we talked about it last week, those vacation homes sit vacant. That's not people there spending money in the local area. It's just there's a lot of negative things about vacant homes sitting. So they're trying to alleviate that. But I called this one. I knew that the local community they would have made other things increase cost. I think if this passed, a lot of other things would go up as far as cost. And I think the local community saw that and was like, you know what? I'm good.
Yeah, they do need to address this, right? They do need to address the housing shortage. All these mountain towns where people buy second homes and vacation homes and they're Airbnb-ing and VRBOing them out. It's a problem because the locals either can't afford it or just don't have, good options in terms of living situation. So they do need to tackle this problem. The locals decided that Measure N was not the way to go. So
yeah, we'll see what they come back with next time, because I'm sure they're going to continue this pursuit. Okay, let's get to the last story. San Francisco voters opt to close the Great Highway for massive oceanside park.
Yeah, this is Ocean Beach on the very west end, right along the ocean of San Francisco. Has the Great Highway, is it 101 or 1? It's 101. That goes just across the ocean. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's this giant, highway. And basically the measure passed with 54% of the votes in the city to close it for 2 miles and create a massive park. Now, the opponents are saying this is going to push 14,000 vehicles into neighborhood streets, which I completely get. I don't know how they're going to alleviate traffic in this area. There's already traffic issues in this neighborhood in San Francisco. But this really could make a really cool park along the ocean in San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have voted for if I was there, because I totally can see both sides of it. Honestly, I could see the people that were against it a little bit more, because traffic's always in it. We're going to talk about traffic kind of a lot in this episode, and it's a big deal, and nobody likes sitting in traffic, and there's just a lot of things that are not good when there's too much traffic in certain places, and so alleviating that whenever possible is good, and adding to the problem is not good. Now, it's supposed to be a pretty nice looking oceanside park, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, I can see how people would be against, what is it, 14,000 additional cars in their neighborhood a day?
Yeah, so my guess is, so this park will be, I believe it's the outer Sunset area. That's the exact spot that they're going to put it. My guess is that entire district of the city voted against it, while the rest of the city is like, yeah, let's have a sweet park we can drive to. And, but the people who actually live in that area are going to have to deal with the issues, which is real now. I think with a giant park, real estate in that area is going to go up too. So, it's interesting. Now, what are they going to make this park into? I don't know, but the options are limitless. It could be really, really cool. Again, I get the people who are against it, but it should be fun to see what happens over the next few years.
Yeah. Good luck to that neighborhood with traffic, I guess.
Okay, that ends the political talk. Hopefully for maybe the next year or two, we don't have to talk about politics ever again. Although this stuff is important, and again, we're not talking about all the crazy BS that's happening in the world. So let's take a quick break before we get into the news of the week. The Talking NorCal podcast is brought to you by the Active NorCal magazine, the premier destination for outdoor content in Northern California. A $30 subscription will get you 2 issues a year, but check this out. I have a deal for you. By using the code Talking NorCal in the checkout, you can get $10 off your $30 subscription.
That is a 33% discount.
33 and a third % discount. The Active NorCal magazine is awesome. We cover all sorts of great stuff in the issues. We have our winter editions. We have our spring, summer editions. So subscribe to the podcast. Again, it's Talking NorCal is the promo code. Go to store.activenorcal.com, click on magazine, subscribe. It's really great. We appreciate the support.
Listen, if you go outside in Northern California at all, just going outside of a building, you are perfect to read this magazine. There is exclusive content in this magazine that you will not find anywhere else. Again, promo code Talking NorCal gets you a 33 and a third discount off of an annual subscription. Let's go.
If you have left a couch within the past 3 years, you should get this magazine. Once again, promo code Talking NorCal. That's the Active NorCal magazine. Now back to the pod. Okay. Should we get into our regularly scheduled news of the week?
Let's do it. First NorCal note of the week. Iconic Point Reyes Shipwreck deteriorating rapidly. It may not even survive the winter.
This is something, it's honestly, it's crazy that this thing is still standing.
It really is.
So we've been, I think we last reported on this like 8 months ago that, it's deteriorating rapidly. It is falling apart, and eventually the ocean's going to come up, swallow it whole, and bring it out. So if you don't know, the Point Reyes Shipwreck, it's located in Inverness, California, on Tamales Bay. It is an abandoned fishing boat, and it's a huge favorite among photographers, and it's become like this tourist destination, this photographer's destination. It's been sitting there since the 1970s, so like 50 years it's been there. And it's just a cool attraction now. Nature is coming to destroy it, and we have photos on activenorcal.com, and essentially locals are saying they don't think it's going to last the winter.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's lasted this long, being as much of a wood frame as it is actually shocking. So, yeah, it's like get while the getting's good. If you want to get a photograph of it, the prime photography of that vessel are far behind us. That thing is looking pretty decrepit at this point. It's in, like, it looks like kind of several pieces. It looks like the top part, like, the interior inside part is no longer like part of the boat. It looks like, I don't know, I haven't seen it up close, but yeah, probably won't survive the winter, and probably soon enough they're gonna have to figure out a way to kind of remove the junk.
The longevity, the duration of this wooden ship is astounding. The fact that it's been there for 50 years is crazy, especially in an area, you got the sea, you got the wind, you got the water coming everywhere, rain, the ocean tides, everything. It sat there. Then years ago, a photographer went in and tried to do like one of those spinning fire things. It lit side of the boat on fire, burned it. It's still standing.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it has gone through so much, and so for me, it's going to be sad when it goes, and this could be the year. But I'm celebrating this thing's longevity, because for a wooden boat, and again, you go look at the pictures on our website. The fact that it's lasted this long is pretty unbelievable. But we'll miss it when it's gone.
Spectacular pictures from that boat, that's for sure. Okay, next story. Fisherman catches monster 47-pound Chinook salmon on the Smith River.
So the guy who caught the fish name's Hank Motz. He was with local guide Shad Hopper, and they're on the Smith River. 47-pound Chinook salmon, monster fish. Really cool photos on our website, or you can check them out on social media. What's most interesting about this is most people think that Chinook salmon fishing is prohibited across the state, right? The Smith River, to my knowledge, is the only place. There might be other places you can fish for salmon, but the Smith River, to my knowledge, is the only one. And it's fall. We know the fall Chinook salmon run is epic in Northern California. I mean, just because they're not fishing for them doesn't mean they're not swimming up the Sacramento River right now, But it's something we used to see a lot. These giant photos of these giant fish. God knows we used to put them up on our website all the time. So it's kind of shocking to see this photo of something that we just don't see anymore. But the Smith is unique because there are no dams. So that's why the Chinook salmon run has continued to flourish, and that's why you can still fish there.
Yeah, that fish was an absolute toad. I mean, shout out to those two guys. What a retired guide and a current guide. It's those kind of guys that are going to get a catch like that. Thing was an absolute toad, absolute lunker. I mean, it's cool to see real big lands of a Chinook.
Yeah, I actually, Bob and I went and caught monster salmon on the Sacramento River. That was in COVID, wasn't it? Like 4 years ago, maybe. With Mike Rasmussen. Mike has actually been guiding on the Smith River. A lot of these fishing guides, especially people that are specialized in these Chinook salmon, they have nowhere to go. Their business is hurting. I mean, Mike used to be able to guide basically from Red Bluff to Calusa, and he could get people coming in from Redding. He could get people coming in from the Bay Area or Sacramento. Now it's the Smith River, which, if you know the Smith, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Like for us, that'd be a 5-6 hour drive. So he actually shot me a text, invited me out there, but we don't have time to go up there and spend a day shooting a video, although sometime I would love to. But there still is salmon fishing in Northern California. It's just very, very rare.
Yeah, when we went fishing that one day, easily, I mean, the two fish that I caught and landed were probably 3 times bigger than the second biggest fishes that I've ever caught in my entire life. I mean, the fight that these things had in them, the strength is just, they're monsters. But yeah, there's just limited places to do it. But if you can find a way to do it legally, get a guide, go out there. You're going to have a hell of a good day.
Yeah, when we did it on the Sacramento River, we each got our limit, which is 2 each. And I think between the 4 of those fish, it added up to 90 to 100 pounds of fish.
So much meat.
Just within 4. And they cut up all the meat, and we put the carcasses back. So let me explain something, because actually I got questions about this photo that we shared on social. someone said, "Oh, I can't stand when they don't catch and release, and I can't stand to see these fish dead and all that." So let me explain Chinook salmon fishing to you and the salmon runs. So these fish have already spawned, right? They are at their spawning ground. They spawn, and then they sit there waiting to die. That's what salmon do. They spawn, and then they die. That's their entire life's journey. Go out to the ocean, get big, come back, spawn, die.
They don't even eat when they're coming back.
They don't even eat when they're coming back, and they don't eat at, like, when you're fishing for them, you're basically trying to start a fight with them,
That's
right?
exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, because they're not going to eat anything.
You just got to annoy them until you piss them off enough.
And they bite you, yeah. So so these fish are about to die, and so you catch them after they spawn, so you're not messing with the spawning process. You cut out their meat, you're able to eat their meat, and then you put the carcass back in the river to provide nutrients for the river. So it's a very humane and sustainable process, and I wish that the salmon runs were good enough that we could continue to do this on other rivers, but unfortunately, you know, we've had issues with salmon runs diminishing, and yeah. So anyway, good job by these guys. Awesome fish. Hopefully we could see a few more of these going into the winter season.
All right, next story. This one kind of surprised me because I had not heard about it before. Hotel along the Northern California coast was just ranked the best in the world.
Yes, the lodge at Bodega Bay was crowned the best hotel in the world by Condé Nast Traveler. It's the 37th annual Reader's Choice Award, and like there were something 575,000 votes. Like there were a lot of people cast votes. So they had their top 50 places to stay in 2024 in the world in the lodge at Bodega Bay. One, it's on the Sonoma coast. If anyone knows where Bodega Bay is, it's. I really don't have anything to say about it other than it just beat out a lot of really prestigious hotels. And if you look at the photos, it looks stunning. I have never been there.
I've never been there. I've never heard of it, which shocked me because I was in fine dining, this kind of hospitality industry for a while. So the fact that it wasn't on my radar shocked me. Bodega Bay is a gorgeous place. Some of my favorite oysters in Northern California can be found there. I had a culinary instructor while in culinary school that would talk about Tamales Bay and Bodega Bay like constantly about just the fresh seafood and stuff that you could find there. And being in Sonoma and so close to Napa, you know, they have all of the fine dining, the wine. It makes sense that this place exists, but I'm just surprised I'd never heard about it before.
Yeah, it's so this. According to the article, this hotel stands out for its luxurious amenities. It's got ocean style massages. It's got in-room jacuzzis, and it's got like little touches like binoculars in every window, so you can look out into the ocean. Looks pretty cool. It's the first time this place has. Or it's the fifth time, that they've made this list, but it's obviously the first time they've made the top spot. So, again, just a really cool award for them. And this is obviously a place we need to check out.
Yeah, private family-owned resort. If they would like to welcome the active NorCal / Talking NorCal crew, you know how to reach us.
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the last NorCal note of the week. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this. What's the first?
I don't either.
Leonids? Leonids, so you do know.
Leonids. Well, I'm guessing. I'm a pretty good pronouncer.
Leonids meteor shower set to light up the Northern California sky this month. In fact, it's a couple days away. Yeah.
This weekend. So we'll release this on Thursday. This happens on Saturday, Sunday, the 16th and 17th of November. Yeah, it's just an awesome little meteor shower. It happens when the Earth passes through the debris field left by Comet 55P Temple Tuttle. I always have trouble with, like, they name comets like craziest names, like Shin Chin Chin, the recent comet that we saw in the sky. So this is actually like used to be a really big meteor shower. They say in the 1800s It used to be 100,000 meteors an hour. Today, you know, that's not so much the case, but it's still a great meteor shower. Now, two problems. One, we might have some weather, right? We might have some clouds in the sky, which would obviously hinder this. Two, the supermoon is on the 15th. So it's going to be a really bright moon, so it's going to hinder your chance to see it. But if you know you get in the right spot, you might be able to see a really cool meteor shower this weekend.
The thing that I find fascinating, the more that I study, you know, the stars and outer space, like these things, we're celebrating this, but really this is just a bunch of rocks hitting Earth, which is kind of scary if you think about it. Now,
well, they're flying past Earth.
Well,
they're not hitting Earth.
Some of them are going into our
atmosphere
and burning, and that's what so, yeah, but we celebrate it, but I mean, if you think about it, it is kind of a dangerous entity. But this is great. Yes, you're right. We may not be able to see it with weather, with the illumination of the bright moon, but anytime there's any astrological things to look at, we're a fan of.
Yeah. And again, this, at the very least, go out and see the supermoon. You know, you can see that no matter what, you know, depending on, you know, the clouds and the weather and everything. There's also one last major meteor shower coming up in December, the Leonids. That's one of the strongest meteor showers of the year, although it comes in December, so there's usually some weather, but, you know, they have 120 meteors per hour. So it's a big one. So our sky watching is not yet done for the year. We still have a couple more opportunities to see some cool stuff, and I'm sure some of the photographers around NorCal will do some really cool photography.
Yeah, if you find some clear skies and can get imagery of supermoon, meteor showers, anything cool, tag Active NorCal or tag Talking NorCal, whatever you
send them our way.
Send them our way. And that concludes the NorCal Notes of the Week.
Okay, so now we have an interview. One of the biggest questions we get is about wolves. And, you know, we talk a lot about it on our website, and probably, you know, the most viral clip we've ever done on this podcast is about wolves and wolves in Northern California. Mostly about, you know, we now have a lot of wolves. We've talked about it. The population's essentially doubled. So we have Amaroq Weiss. She's a senior wolf advocate at Center for Biological Diversity. She was featured in the Active NorCal magazine. I did this huge article about wolves and wolves coming back into California and why it matters and, you know, the impacts of it. So I've talked to her before, but this is her first time being on the podcast, and we'll probably have to bring her back because there's so much to talk about. So let's go to our interview with Amaroq. Okay, we'd now like to welcome on a very, very special guest, Amaroq Weiss. She is the senior wolf advocate at the Center for Biological Diversity. Amaroq, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure to speak with you previously, Zach, and I'm looking forward to today. And maybe Brien is on as well today, and I'll get to chat with him too. But whatever, let's go.
He's sitting right next to me, and he's a fan of yours. So I first have to thank you because you were instrumental in this. If I can get it in the camera, in this article in our most recent issue of the Active NorCal magazine, where you actually gave me so much information. We talk a lot about wolves and the reestablishment of gray wolves in California. But, you know, in talking with you and interviewing you for this article, there was just a lot I still had to learn. So thank you so much. I want to start at the beginning, and, you know, we're going to get to a lot of stuff in this interview, but I want to start sort of at, you know, hundreds, maybe even thousands of years ago. What is the history of wolves in California?
Yeah, I think people will be surprised to learn that we once had wolves ranging widely across the state. If you look at old U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service maps, you wouldn't know it, because when they mapped out wolf territory, they have like this line that goes like partly into California, but leaves the whole rest of it blank. but they created that map before a number of bodies of research had been published, before I had done massive amounts of research at the Historical Library at UC Berkeley, before Robert Schmidt published his work on presence of wolves in California, before Malcolm Margolin wrote his books or his articles on what we know from Native Americans. So here's what we don't know. We don't know how many wolves once ranged across the state. Here's what we do know, that they were widely distributed, not just in the northeastern part of the state, as some maps will depict it. So first of all, we know that from the languages and the stories, even the artwork and the dance regalia of the indigenous people that lived here for thousands of years. When Europeans arrived in California, there were something like 300,000 native peoples living here, and anywhere from, I think the estimate is 80 to 125 different languages spoken, and almost every one of them had a distinct word for wolf, fox, dog, and coyote. So they knew the difference between these canids, and even some of their stories give characteristics of the way these species act and hunt. So you know what species they're talking about. We also know from other written records. So missionaries kept diaries, travelers that came through as naturalists or explorers, even mountain men left diaries and recorded references. There's some books that talk about wolves. And so we know between those two, we know that there are reported sightings that even CDFW has written down in their California wolf plan. At the back, there's this huge appendix of who saw what, when, and how many, and where. And so that's like why we know there hasn't been a wolf seen out in Ventura County for 200 to 300 years until OR 93 made his way down there. So these records do exist. But what we also know is, like everywhere else across the country, as explorers arrived here, they moved westward, they came on shore, and they cleared the land. They basically cleared the land of elk and deer and bison and moose, and then the predators, the grizzly bears and the wolves, and they cleared them to replace them with land for agricultural crops, and also where they could raise cattle and sheep for hides and for meat. And so this was an expansion that happened everywhere, including in California. And just like everywhere else, wolves were wiped out across the country. We wiped out wolves throughout almost the entire lower 48 by the early 1930s. And in fact, in California in 1891, we enacted a wolf and coyote bounty and brought in thousands of wolf hides and paid out thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on those. That was done across the country. And then in the early 1900s, Congress actually appropriated funds to eradicate wolves across the country. And those government wolfers were very, very efficient and effective at wiping out wolves. So in California, our last two known wild wolves were killed in 1922 in San Bernardino County and in 1924 in Lassen County. So just right there, that shows you from the southern part of the state to the northern part of the state is where we had our last two wolves. And so it was another 87 years until our first confirmed wild wolf came into California. And this is a wolf that everyone knows as OR7 or
Yes.
Journey. Yep. And Journey was given that name from a naming contest that a conservation group in Oregon did. And they got responses from every single continent but one. They got thousands of responses for that naming contest. So we call him Journey because he journeyed, but we also call him OR7 because that's the name that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife gave him when they radio collared him. He was the seventh wolf that they'd radio collared since wolves first started returning there in 1999. And so Oregon had wolves disperse in, just like California is having now. Oregon's wolves came from Idaho. And OR7 was born into a pack in northeastern Oregon, one of the first packs there, the Amnaha pack. And in 2011, around September, he was about 2.5 years old. He left his birth pack and he traveled diagonally across the state. And as the agency began giving that information, the world began to watch, literally the world began to watch these map points. And then in late December, actually on the very anniversary of the passage of the Endangered Species Act, OR7 lifted upon the Oregon side of the border, set it back down in California and kept on going. And we all continued to follow him. He was in California for about 15 months. He went back to Oregon in April, I think, of 2013, came back into California really briefly later that fall, came back into California really briefly early in 2014. And then in May, we learned that trail cameras had shown that he had found a mate in southwestern Oregon, another wolf that had traveled from the eastern part of the state, and then they had pups. And so they were named the Rogue Pack because their territory was in the Rogue River, Rogue National Forest watershed. And they had pups from 2014 through, I think, 2018. And then OR7 is thought to have died in 2020. His mate, for sure, we know, died in 2021. But he left an incredible legacy in California because not only did he teach the world that wolves travel when they're looking for love and new territory, but his pups have come to California. And one of the pups from his very first litter established one of California's early packs. So after OR7, we actually had, well, actually, I'll pause. I'll let you ask a question.
No, you're so great at explaining all of this, and you know so much. It's great. And you know, when we were talking before this interview, you corrected me. You rightfully corrected me when I said the reintroduction of wolves in California, and you said we actually like to say the reestablishment of gray wolves in California, because I think there are people who think that, you know, wildlife officials are actually physically putting wolves into the state, and that's just not the case. The wolves are actually coming from a reintroduction into Yellowstone, correct? That's where sort of the western states started receiving wolves again after 100 years.
Well, actually, the reintroduction, and you pinned on something else that people know part of, but not the rest. So in 1995 and 96, yes, wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park, but they were also at the same time reintroduced into central Idaho in the Frank Church River of No Return Wilderness, which is an incredible, wild, big core body of habitat for wolves to live. In both cases, the wolves were captured in Alberta and British Columbia, and they were transported down to the US and released into those two areas. The wolves that moved into Oregon subsequently, and also Washington, came from Idaho, not from Yellowstone. They came from, because Idaho is pressed right up against the border of Oregon and Washington. Washington also gets some wolves from British Columbia. But yeah, so these wolves that are coming into California now are like the great, great, great grandchildren of the wolves that were reintroduced to Idaho that then moved into Oregon and set up families there and then began to have offspring.
And it's sort of a testament to how, you know, these you know, animals are they're perfectly, like, Northern California and California in general is perfectly set up for them, right? It's like great territory, it's great ecosystem, and eventually they move into places they want to be, and they find mates, and they find you know, food and everything. So what is the current state of wolves? I know there's been a lot of news, and you know, I think we're gonna have to do interviews, you know, maybe a couple times a year because this news comes in so quickly. But what's the current state of wolves in California? Like, how many wolf packs are there? How many estimated wolves are there?
Yeah, sure. So jumping from OR7 to today, in between, I'll just make a note that we did have one pack develop, the Shasta pack, in eastern Siskiyou County. That was in 2015. A couple months later, they disappeared. That's a whole nother long story we can get on to on another.
Do a whole podcast on the Shasta pack, because I'm fascinated, and really it talks a lot about the controversy surrounding wolves and the two groups that are battling, both one, you know, to conserve wolves and one to eradicate them. But again, maybe we need a whole podcast for that. So go ahead.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So after the Shasta pack, then our next confirmed pack was the Lassen pack. That was founded by OR7's son. He came to California, met up with a female whose genetics show that she is from the Northern Rockies. So she came from Montana or Idaho and Wyoming. And again, back to this point of this is what wolves do. They don't need to be reintroduced all the time. Often they just travel on their own. That's what wolves do when they get to be 1.5 to 3 years old. They leave their homes. They're like teenage kids, except I guess now teenage kids, humans, they come home and stay living at home. But the wolves usually don't do that. They go off looking for their own mates in their own territories. And so we now today have confirmed 7 packs, although I have a belief that CDFW is going to soon be making an announcement, and we may learn that there's another 1 or 2 more packs. But just in the last few years, we've really seen this increase. So the Lassen pack formed in 2017, and then our next confirmed pack was late 2020, early 2021, the whaleback pack. I'll go through what we all have now and what their numbers are. So the Lassen pack, which ranges across Lassen and Plumas counties, and their territories are big. These wolf packs, their territories are big. Their territories like 300, 350 square miles. So they currently have 11 wolves in the Lassen pack. Then the whaleback pack is in eastern Siskiyou County. They also have a big territory, and there's 13 wolves in that pack. The Beckworth pack actually hasn't been seen for just about a year. They haven't been confirmed for about a year, but last fall there were 2 known wolves in that pack, and they're in Plumas and Sierra counties. Then we have the Bayamseo pack in Plumas County, and they have 10 wolves. The Alumni pack and all the way down in Tulare County, and they've got 15 wolves. The Harvey pack in Lassen and Shasta counties, they kind of range across both. There's 10 wolves, and then the Antelope pack, the newest name pack, which ranges across Sierra and Nevada counties, they have 2 known wolves. So that's, like 63 wolves there. But in addition to that, there have been repeated sightings of several groups of 2 to 3 wolves in Tehama County, I think Modoc County, maybe Shasta County. And so I'm going to say ballpark, we have 65 to 70 wolves. But as I said, I think we're going to get another announcement or update or a new map or something from CDFW pretty soon, because I'm hearing things about some other packs possibly being confirmed.
Yeah, there were recent sightings in the Hope Valley area near Lake Tahoe, and it's so interesting because we personally get a lot of videos and photos sent to us, and I'm no expert. I can't tell what exactly, indicates a wolf sighting, right? So, these recent sightings near Lake Tahoe, they said they can't find any evidence. Are there a lot of these sightings that turn out to be something else that's not a wolf?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true in any place, any state where wolves show up. You get a lot of reported sightings of animals that aren't wolves at all. A lot of times people will mistake coyotes for wolves. In the winter, coyotes have very full, lustrous coats, so they look bigger than they are. In the reverse situation, in the summer, when wolves have blown their coats and they look kind of scraggly and scruffy, they just look like enormous coyotes. Malamutes, huskies, and even German shepherds from a distance will look like wolves to people. But there's a couple of defining features, I think, for people to think about when you're really looking at an animal and wondering if it's a wolf. So for one thing, they're much, much larger than dogs. Their paws are much, much larger than dogs. I like to think of wolves as dogs with snowshoes. That's how big their paws are. It's like, bam, you see a track, that is a wolf track. They're usually around maybe up to 5 inches long, maybe 4.5 inches across. A coyote track is going to look really similar in shape to a wolf track, but it'll be so much smaller. You can look at things like their head shape and their ear shape. So wolves have ears that are shorter and more triangular than coyotes. Their ears are more long and pointy. Wolves' faces, their foreheads and their muzzles are much broader and blockier than a coyote. They have really narrow chests, like the keel of a boat, that helps wolves make their way through snow. They have legs that are so much longer than a coyote. Look at their tail. So dogs sometimes will hold their tail curled over their back. Wolfy looking dogs like huskies or malamutes, wolves don't hold their tails curled over their back. And actually, if you're seeing just the tail end of a canid disappearing into the forest and you're kind of wondering, was that a wolf or a coyote or a fox? So think of it in this order. Wolves have long tails, coyotes have even longer tails, and foxes have the longest of all. They're like brushing the ground. So there's a lot of features you can look at to begin to question yourself as to what you saw. Was that really a wolf or not? And more often than not, it's not a wolf, because more often than not, if a wolf sees or smells or hears you, they're going to be gone before you see them.
Yeah. We have a lot of people, DMing us in our comment section, emailing me, just saying they've seen wolves. And so I just really wanted you to clarify that most times these aren't actually wolves. So from 2017 to now, almost 7-8 years, we've seen basically go from almost no population of wolves to 60 to 70 wolves within the state, right? Um, Two questions. One is, where do we peak in terms of population? How much what big of population can California handle in terms of wolves? And two, um, we're seeing some states that are dealing with the populations by hunting and trapping them. We've seen it. We've seen certain states legalize it in order to diminish the populations. So can you just cover sort of the population rise, what we can expect in the future, and also the issue of hunting them? Obviously, you can't hunt them in California, but people talk about it. So can you just cover that just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I agree with you. These are burning questions I see all the time in comments that are written in after media articles that are posted online. So, yeah, these are the top questions. So, the population of wolves in California is going to continue to rise, and it's going to continue to expand its range. For any of your listeners who take the time to look at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife California Wolf Plan that was completed in 2016, you'll see that there's a map in there that has showed in darkened areas where there is suitable wolf habitat, what has been identified as suitable wolf habitat. And there's particular characteristics you're looking for. You're looking for fairly low human population density, low road density, because wolves get hit by cars or people drive in and shoot them. You want forest cover, which is a surrogate for availability of prey and then actual prey numbers, if you've got that in terms of deer and elk, those types of things. So on this map, they have mapped out, and if you look at the map, I want to say it's like at around page 156 or something of the plan, you'll see the areas that are grayed out. And so it goes from the north of the state all the way south of Interstate 80. And the area that's mapped north of Interstate 80, that's 23,200 square miles. They haven't even calculated yet what the portion that's suitable below Interstate 80 is, but that's over 23,000 square miles of habitat identified as suitable for wolves. And then the plan also estimated within that habitat, what is the carrying capacity? What can we expect? And they estimated it two ways. One, based on biomass in terms of numbers of deer and elk available and how much of those prey wolves eat. And then also what's the average pack territory size in other states, so what we can expect in California. And the range is anywhere from 371 to 497 wolves. So we're talking 370 to 500 wolves, and that's north of Interstate 80. So we can actually support even more wolves south of Interstate 80 on top of that. And, if we compare it to like Washington or Oregon in terms of the trajectory of what kind of timeline we're looking at. So Washington, as I mentioned, is right next to Idaho and right next to British Columbia. So it's gotten wolves from both places. Oregon is right up against Idaho, so it's gotten its wolves there. And there's a substantial population of wolves in British Columbia and a good-sized population of wolves in Idaho that's quickly being driven down by some pretty bad hunting policies that they've just enacted there. But they have a larger pool of wolves coming in than California does, because really our source is just Oregon. So in Washington, they had their first pack confirmed in 2008. Today, they have about 260 wolves in, I think, 42 packs. Oregon, they got their first pack confirmed in 2008. Today, they have about 178 wolves in, I think it's 22 packs. 22 packs. And so I would have thought that things would go a little more slowly in California. But I think there's a counterbalance happening here, and that is that in Washington and Oregon, in the eastern 1/3 of those states, which is where they have most of their wolf population, wolves have no federal protections. And the agencies there can kill wolves for livestock conflict. Ranchers can kill wolves for livestock conflict, either if they get a permit from the agency, if there's been a predation in previously, or they can shoot them on sight if they're attacked, if their livestock are attacked. And what that has done is created a vacuum. Every time wolves get killed in those parts of the state, the new wolves coming in just fill up that territory. So they're not making their way westward. We're not seeing a massive increase in population to the west in either Washington or Oregon. Washington has 0 breeding pairs in the western part of the state. Oregon has a handful. California, because we do have these protective laws, federal and state protections, fully endangered, what that means is that the agency here is focusing solely on assisting livestock producers to implement non-lethal, proactive methods to prevent or stop conflicts. And that results in more wolves staying alive, which means there's more wolves that can reach that age of 2 to 3 to go off and disperse and find a mate from another pack that went off and dispersed. So I think that we may actually see wolves continue to increase at the level we're seeing right now, perhaps maybe even a little faster than I would have thought them to. And it's because of those protections. So on that hunting issue, let me swing back now and go back to that second question, which is, there are very few states in this country right now that wolves can be hunted or trapped legally. And the states where it exists is where federal protections have been removed in the northern Rocky states of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. That took place in 2011 when Congress interfered with what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does in terms of conserving wolves, and they ordered Fish and Wildlife Service through a bill they passed to delist wolves federally in those states. And as a result, since 2011, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming have all allowed wolf hunting and trapping. And then starting in 2021, Montana and Idaho particularly passed very, very expansive laws on much more ways that you can kill, where, how, when, no bag limits, quotas being increased. They added snaring of wolves in Wyoming, actually in all 3 states. It is not illegal to chase a wolf to exhaustion with your snowmobile and then run them over. It's absolutely barbaric. They do that with coyotes too. And in fact, they call it yote whacking. People have probably seen videos of it. That's not fair chase hunting. There's nothing ethical or sporting about that, and let's face it, nobody eats wolf meat. Nobody in the lower 48 is living a subsistence lifestyle where they need to have a wolf pelt to make a coat to survive the winter. So all of this is recreational trophy hunting and trapping and snaring. That's what it is. I think we can distinguish between that and subsistence hunting. I think we can distinguish that between that and hunters who go out and kill elk and deer for meat to put food on the table for their family, which in many respects is a much more intuitive understanding process than getting your meat shrink wrapped at a supermarket, right? It's important to know where your food comes from. But so what happens when wolves lose federal protections is immediate hunting seasons. And we saw this in Wisconsin a couple of years ago when wolves were federally delisted for a brief period of time. Wisconsin instituted a hunt, and in less than 3 days' time, I think in 72 hours or less, hunters had killed almost 30% of the entire wolf population. So it's shocking. It's really, really shocking. And so then this goes to the question of, should we be hunting wolves, right? So I think the question comes up with, is their population going to get completely out of bounds? And this is where it's really, really good to pay attention to science, because all the wolf biologists around the world will tell you the same thing. Wolves self-regulate. They regulate their own populations. They will kill other wolves over territorial fights. That's how they regulate. They ebb and flow with the prey population. So if the deer or elk population goes up, then the wolf population go up. And if the deer and elk population goes down, the wolf population will go down. If there are very severe winters that are or some lack of food source, wolves will sometimes forego having any litters at all that year, or they'll have very, very small litters. So there's this ebb and flow that goes on. Wolves do not need to be regulated. And really great example of this is in the Midwest, in Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin, where they have about 4,000 to 4,500 wolves across those three states. Most of the time, since they were listed in 1974, there has been no hunting of wolves, and that population has stayed at that level for like the last 10 to 15 years. Once it got up to that level, it has just stayed at that level. They're self-regulating. The other thing is, in the Northern Rockies, there were thoughts, well, we should hunt wolves because that'll help the livestock producers out. But the studies that have been done there have shown that hunting and trapping wolves recreationally has no impact at all on whether or not there's livestock conflicts. So if hunters are thinking that they're helping ranchers out by killing wolves, they're not. And then the other piece of that science is that by killing wolves, you actually can exacerbate the conflicts. You can move the conflicts to your neighbors. And what the science also shows is that the best measures for halting or preventing livestock conflicts to begin with is changed animal husbandry practices by livestock producers implementing these non-lethal conflict prevention measures, including really bare bones, obvious things like literally bones. Haul away your carcasses. If you have livestock that have died from other cause, don't leave them out in bone piles. You're going to draw in all kinds of predators. So I'm really pleased that California has taken this route of protecting wolves from needless killing and killing that actually doesn't help prevent conflicts and can exacerbate conflicts. But I'm also pleased that the state is really focusing on non-lethal measures because we can coexist with wolves. We can coexist with far more numbers of wolves than we have here now. If you look at Europe, Europe has twice as many wolves, twice as many brown bears, what we call grizzly, twice as many lynx as we have in the United States, in a land mass half the size of the United States that has twice as many people. So if Europe can do it, we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the opposition groups are always point to livestock, right? But the state of California has invested in, like you said, both non-lethal ways to keep wolves away, but also they have actively, given money to these ranchers who have experienced livestock loss. And so then the opposition group would say, well, why would we invest our money into it? Which brings me to our last question. And when we did this article for the magazine, it was my favorite answer that you gave to anything. Wolves that were reestablished in areas, they saw both better fishing and they saw less deer car collisions. So let's take me from, a wolf enters an area and these benefits. How do wolves benefit the ecosystem?
Yeah, we know so much now, but the beauty is that we also keep learning more and more things of how this benefit comes about and what kinds of benefits there are. So, strictly on the nature ecology side of thing, it's important to understand that wolves and their wild prey, whether it's deer or elk or moose or musk oxen or bison, whatever the large wild ungulate is where wolves live, they evolved together over thousands and millions of years. And so if you love these beautiful wild ungulates, if you love how agile and fleet they are and robust and muscular, you have wolves to thank for that. I think you're an Aldo Leopold fan. You've probably read Sand County Almanac, and everybody knows his story about fierce green fire. But there's a couple of other things, he's smaller statements in there that stand out for me. And one is when he talks about harmony with the land is like harmony with a friend. You can't cherish his right hand and cut off his left. That is to say, you cannot love game and hate predators. And then here in California, we have a homegrown poet, Robinson Jeffers, who back in 1940 wrote a poem in which he penned the line, what but the wolf's tooth whittled so fleet the limbs of the antelope. And this very presence of wolves and their natural hunting practices keeps their wild prey healthy. It keeps them on the move. And what I mean by keeping them healthy is that wolves specifically target the most vulnerable animals. They are looking for the old, the sick, the weak, the young. And by culling out those animals, they're leaving forage on the ground for the more prime animals, the more reproductively healthy animals that need that forage so they can carry through their pregnancies and raise more offspring. And we can see in the Northern Rockies that the restoration of wolves there has done exactly this for the elk and deer population. Most people don't know this, but today there are thousands more elk in the Northern Rockies states than there were in 1995 when wolves were first reintroduced there. Thousands more. And we know this. We know this from the agency, which does their studies of the deer and elk there. The agencies have actually referred to the last decade as the golden age of hunting in the Northern Rockies. Hunter success rates, hunter harvest rates are at all-time highs. And we know this because hunters report that data to the agency, and the agency documents that, and then they report it to the public. And the reason that hunters aren't seeing elk where they used to is because apex predators like wolves are keeping them on the move. And so being on the move then has other benefits to the ecosystem. That allows the forage that they've been nibbling away at to not be overbrowsed. So that allows willows and aspens to grow back. Those shrubby riparian trees provide nesting and roosting materials for migrating neotropical birds that are going up and down the Pacific Flyway. Those trees, their roots provide stability on the banks of rivers and creeks, which prevents erosion, which prevents soil and gravel from going in and smothering fish eggs. This is where I was talking to you about the benefits for fish. Provides building materials for beaver, who then build dams, which create these cool, deep ponds that fish and frogs need to thrive. And it's not that wolves are the sole reason that an ecosystem stays healthy. And it's also not that the eradication of wolves is the only thing that depletes an ecosystem of its health and vitality. It's that wolves and other top predators are as important as everything else. They are as important as fire and climate and weather and moisture and soil conditions and all the other factors that keep ecosystem dynamics functioning. Again, Aldo Leopold said it really nicely. He said, the land is one organism. Its parts, like our parts, compete with each other and cooperate with each other. The competitions are as much of the inner workings as the cooperations, and you can regulate them cautiously, but not abolish them. He said, to keep every cog and wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering. This is why we don't want to eradicate any species. Also, in talking about the health of the ecosystem, for any of your listeners who are hunters, I'm sure you're all aware that chronic wasting disease is spreading among deer and elk from state to state to state. And for those of you who don't know what CWD is, it's a brain disease. It's like mad cow disease in cows. And if you're a hunter, you do not want to be eating deer or elk meat from an animal that has CWD. And scientists think that wolf presence may help stem the spread of CWD, because again, wolves do target the sick, the weak, and they can detect a sick animal long before human eyes ever can. In fact, there's even a wild ungulate specialist, a scientist well known in Canada, Valerius Geist, who has said that if we hadn't wiped out wolves to begin with, it may be that CWD never would have taken root.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't even get to your thing about the deer. So yeah, I know we're short on time. So
no, I believe it was Wisconsin where once wolves came in, the collisions with deer and cars went down, and it's because these ungulates are in better shape because they have to stay on the move because they're constantly have to be aware of their surroundings and their predators. And it's almost like, your roommate is a personal trainer or something. And that, you got to stay on the move. You have to stay in shape or else, there are just so many benefits. And I think that's kind of like the most important thing that people need to know is we're not just letting these predators in just to have a good time and eat everything. There are legitimate scientific benefits to having them come back into the state. So anyway, we can end on that. We could go on forever, and I really appreciate you coming on because you're sort of this encyclopedia of knowledge that I get to open up and sort of pick through chapters. So it's fantastic to have you on. And I think, maybe you can come back next spring and we can talk about any updates, but I also want to do sort of a deep dive on the Shasta Pack, which is a very controversial subject. And of course, we don't know what happened to the Shasta Pack. They disappeared, but I'd like to get your opinion and talk deeper on it. So thank you so much, Amaroq. I really appreciate you coming on. And I hope we can do this more often.
I hope we can too. And I love being on, and I love the show that you do. I love the magazine you put out. That was actually my first hard copy edition that I had seen, was your issue with the wolf article, but everything else in there was beautiful too. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm hoping we can just have a relationship and talk wolves, because I know that people want to hear it. And I think that people need to learn about it that someone knows from someone that knows a lot more than me. So thank you again. I hope we could talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay, big thank you to Amaroq for coming on the podcast. Again, it's a fascinating topic. We've discussed it before. I do think that wolf reintroduction is the bad word, because people think that people are bringing wolves into the state, which they're not. Wolves coming back into California is overall a good thing.
Yeah, they're coming quicker than we thought they would, but we'll see what the future holds.
Yes, they're good for the ecosystems. They're good for the environment, and we can handle them quite well. So again, thanks to Amaroq for coming on the show. So there's one more thing. There's one more thing we got to talk about that we put on the script here. And honestly, it's something that I've avoided talking about, because I love Palisades Tahoe. To me, it's the best mountain in Tahoe. I do have a relationship with their PR team. I think they do a fantastic job helping us create content. They've had us up a couple times. They, send us a lot of content that we can use for our social pages and our website. So I've sort of avoided talking about this, but it's something I can no longer avoid. They are trying to they're trying to transform Olympic Valley, which is the large area surrounding Palisades Tahoe, into this giant place with homes and hotels, and they're trying to add, almost 1,500 bedrooms and 300,000 square feet of commercial space. They're putting this in their giant parking lot, and so this is going to a vote with Placer County soon. It was already voted on by Placer County, but it's been fought by a million different organizations. The reason why they're fighting it so much is, if you've ever been to Truckee or, Highway 89 between Truckee and Tahoe City, it is a parking lot. Like, it's so hard to drive through there. There's so much traffic. And as we know, we talked with Haley Hawkins last week, one of the major negative contributing factors to the health and clarity of Lake Tahoe right now is traffic, is car traffic. A lot happens from it. So this giant proposed development, which at one point included a massive indoor water park, which, the opposition groups are using as sort of their marketing to say, like, this is effing crazy. So they're going back to Placer County to vote on it. Again, Placer County voted yes last time. The vote is coming up on next Tuesday, the 19th. So it is big news. We love Palisades. We love Olympic Valley. I'm not so sure I support such a big development.
So this is a jurisdictional conversation.
Yes.
To an extent. There is a body that guides the restrictions of environmental impact for things like this closer to the water. Was that the best way of describing their territory?
Yes, yeah.
But just outside of their jurisdiction, what has been called many times an invisible line that really has some, I won't get into that, but the entity that protects the area closest to the water in Tahoe would never have let this thing happen. But because it's outside of their jurisdiction, another entity is in charge of approving or denying this. Now, Palisades is trying to expand. They're clearly trying to take their business to the next level. But is that worth the environmental impact of the traffic? And that's the easiest thing. Now, in their submission in trying to get this approved, they have submitted an environmental impact study, but it did not include really traffic. And so that's where the people that are against us are like, no. You haven't even taken into account the traffic in the area and what that's going to do to the environment. That's not even including making traffic suck even more than it already does. So, this is a tough one, Tahoe is going to probably try to continue to expand like this, but at what cost? And at some point, there is a limit. And have we reached it? It kind of feels like we have from you used to live in Reno, and so we would go to Tahoe a lot, and you've experienced definitely more than me the amount of traffic on a day-to-day basis today before this massive expansion happens. So, I'm sure if I lived there, I would be against this.
I've been going to Tahoe for a very long time. When I lived in Chico, I had a season pass for the 6 years I lived in Chico to Tahoe, and I'd drive there. Back then, basically from Sacramento to either North Lake Tahoe or South Lake Tahoe, it was about an hour and a half. You could even do it if there's no cars on the road, about a $1.15. Since we've moved to Sacramento over the last 4 or 5 years, I have never made it from Sacramento to Tahoe in less than 2 hours. So, and in some cases, literally to South Lake Tahoe, it's taken 3 to 4 hours. Traffic has gotten out of control. And I'm all for capitalism, baby. Like, it's their property. They should be able to do somewhat what they want to do with it. But the car situation has gotten so out of control. These roads were not set up for this many cars. We have one-lane roads heading on Highway 89. We have one-lane roads on Highway 50 into South Lake Tahoe. Like, they just can't. And not to mention, then locals can't go to the grocery store without it taking 30 minutes to go a mile, right? So what they're saying when they did the study, when the Sierra Watch did the study, on a normal day, it would put 1,353 more cars on the road in the Tahoe Basin on a normal day. When driving in Tahoe is like at its peak on say a Friday afternoon, it would add 3,300 more cars. So it seems like they are creating this massive development at the inconvenience of everyone else. I'm talking the businesses, although there's a lot of businesses that will benefit from that, but the visitors, the locals, just everyone will not be able to get around. And I've said this for a long time, for years when I saw them. I saw Vail buying up these mountains and then jacking up the prices. I started calling it Vailification of Tahoe. This is Altura. Altura owns Palisades. It owns Mammoth Mountain. It owns a lot of different. It's Vail and Altura sort of compete as the conglomerates of the ski industry. But I get it that this would be good for their business, but this is just bad for Tahoe overall. And again, I don't want to be the one that tells a business what they can and can't do. But if we're talking about significant negative impacts on the environment and significant negative impacts on the locals, then I'm against it. And I think what's probably going to happen is, there's going to continue to be lawsuits, no matter how Placer County. If Placer County says no to it, then they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. But even if Placer County votes yes, there's still going to be lawsuits galore.
Yeah, and that's what happened this last time. It was approved, but then there were lawsuits that came that were like, well, wait, you didn't look into this and that and this. And so, yeah, I don't think that this is an open and shut case by any means at this point.
There's one thing about these environmental groups, especially within Tahoe, they know how to litigate. Like they
get the money.
They get tons of money, and they get the best environmental litigators, and they're going to drag this thing on and try to shrink it as small as possible. I do think eventually they will do some sort of development. I don't know if it's going to be the size that they've been trying to do. Like we said, this was already approved, and a lawsuit hit them, and they made it smaller.
They eliminated the massive water park.
They eliminated the 90,000 square foot indoor water park, which is like, why? Why are you trying to build an indoor water park on a mountain in Tahoe?
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous. There is a giant lake where you can go and play in the water. Like, we don't need this. So
I think you're right, though. This is absolutely going to happen. It's just, what size is it going to be? What
scale?
How big is this going to be, and what is going to be the impact specifically of traffic? There's other environmental factors at stake here, but they're pointing the traffic situation as kind of the big one that a lot of people will get behind, I think.
And if you haven't heard our last podcast with Keep Tahoe Blues, the League to Save Lake Tahoe's Haley Hawkins, I asked her, what is currently sort of the number one threat to the clarity and the health of Lake Tahoe? And I was shocked when she said traffic, because that's not something you think about. Trash, you think about plastics, you think about invasive species. She said, no, traffic is our biggest problem right now that causes pollution in the lake. So this seems timely to me to hear that and to see this. And maybe it was top of mind to her because Keep Tahoe Blue and the League to Save Lake Tahoe are part of the organizations that are opposed to this. But again, we love Palisades, Tahoe. We love the people there.
We love Tahoe. We want to keep Tahoe blue.
Yeah. So there are two, it's like your two favorite kids fighting, how do you choose? But I think in this case, one is right. One is right. And that it's like, guys, chill out. Like, Tahoe can no longer take this sort of strain. So that's that. I had to talk about this.
We'll see what happens.
They're going to a vote. By the time, we won't be able to talk about it. Next time we get on the podcast, we'll see what the vote happens. Again, I've sort of stayed silent on this, but at this point, I think it warrants some sort of our opinion a little bit. So
that was our opinion.
That's our opinion. All right. Is that the end of the podcast?
That's all I got for you. That's all I got for you. We take a break next week?
I think we're taking a break.
We'll see.
We have family in town.
We got Pops going into town.
Yeah. We're also sending out our magazine next week. We have a lot going on. And if you have not subscribed to the Active NorCal magazine, we got a banger issue coming out here in the next couple weeks. So, subscribe to the magazine. By the way, just go do it right now and then go sign up for our Houseboats houseboats.com giveaway. Again, we've teamed with houseboats.com. We're giving away a more than $3,000 houseboat trip on Shasta Lake with houseboats.com. It's Silverthorne Resort and it's Jones Valley Resort on Shasta Lake. The Odyssey Houseboat sleeps 19. Two staterooms,
hot tub,
1.5 beds, and a hot tub. So sign up for the magazine. Go enter our giveaway. Again, I mean, we have at least 3 more giveaways coming up in the next few weeks. So even if you don't get the houseboat, which there are a lot of entries, by the way, I probably shouldn't say that, but there are a lot of people who have entered. A lot of people want that. We've gotten a great response, but we do have some smaller ones coming up as well that you're going to like. So subscribe to the magazine, go to activenorcal.com/magazine, and listeners to the Talking NorCal podcast can get $10 off so it's a $30 a year subscription. We'll give you $10 off. It's just $20. Use the code Talking NorCal in checkout. I've been seeing a lot of people have been using it, which is fan. I mean, I know people listen to the podcast,
of course they do,
but it's awesome. Like when it comes in and I see, it's kind of a weird thing because instead of it pops up as a notification as a $20 subscription instead of a $30, and I get excited.
We should name our audience.
Name our audience.
You know how certain podcasts say that their fans are certain.
All right.
You know what can't come to mind immediately? It's not going to work. Lemurians.
Well, that's not gonna
Shout out our Lemurian listeners.
So that's your job before the next podcast is to name. You give me 3 options to name our listeners.
Get at me at Chef Brien O'Brien if you have any suggestions for the audience name.
So that does the podcast. Thanks for listening, guys. And remember, stay active.
NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and I could spend all day just chilling in the South Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and Darren knows how to kick it down in Santa Cruz. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal, and we get a little cray-cray when we visit the East Bay. We're NorCal, we're hella NorCal.